no secret that girls mature faster than boys, but my next guest says trying to close that gap shouldn't be the goal. So today, a guide for moms with boys, expert advice to help you understand and navigate the maturity gap. Family researcher and BYU instructor Heather Johnson says the maturity gap is real, but it's often a bigger problem for moms than it is for boys. And I think that that's just generally kind of a true thing. As parents, we sometimes involve ourselves in things that we don't necessarily need to. Why is this gap? Why is there this urge to close the gap?
Well, naturally, we have our boys, and especially if we start comparing, we look at girls around them and they're behind, right? We look at some other boys, excuse me, and they're struggling against other boys even. So we've got to stop comparing, but we have to take a step back and go, this is real. It is real. It is true that girls are about 2 years ahead of boys at this point in their lives. It's true that they don't even out until about the age of 15. So instead of fighting it and denying that it's going to happen, we really want to educate ourselves and help them grow through the process instead of fighting against it, right?
And I love this idea of fighting against it. You actually say that these preteen boys need more attention than toddlers.
They do.
Which kind of makes me want to die because I have 2 toddlers.
They do. And in fact, the interesting thing, the best way to safeguard our preteen boys from struggles is to give them more attention, Now, the way it works is we want them to go out and explore and discover and learn and grow themselves. If we haven't given them enough attention at home, then there isn't the security of them knowing that we're always there and that they have a safe haven. So they won't go out and try the new things. They won't go out and test the waters. So we need to give them as much attention as a toddler. We also need to understand how their brains are working. Their brains are working very differently at this point. And the poor things are so confused. They're trying to make sense of it just like we are. What starts to happen is their brains are starting to think like adults, but they haven't had enough life experiences to act like adults. So you naturally can see the disconnect, right? Their brains are doing one thing, but they don't have any life experiences to tie them together. So we have to role play what those experiences look like so they can know how to use what their brain is doing and put it into action.
And knowing they don't have that experience, how can we encourage them to make smart choices when they're not an adult?
Right, we're gonna teach them, and it's a phrase I love, to be the keeper of their own options. And what this means is we've gotta teach our boys that what they do now, the choices they make, will limit or can limit the options they have in the future. And this helps us too, because I know as parents we need to know what battles we fight and what battles we don't. But the fact of the matter is, if our son wants to wear a shirt that looks goofy with his pants, that is not going to limit his options in the future.
This is true.
If he does want to try smoking, that is going to limit his options in the future, which means, you know, he most likely will have an addiction. He most likely will have lung cancer. He cannot be a swimmer and smoke at the same time.
So know the difference between what's important and what isn't.
Right.
And do we need to communicate with boys differently from girls?
We do. Male brains work very different than female brains. Female brains with our girls, they connect and bond through communication. But male brains bond through action, through activity. So it's funny, we bring our boys in and after school it's like, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. And when they don't, we wonder why. But their brains don't have the capacity to make that connection. It's not how they function. So we should be thinking, what can I do with you? What can I do with you? Where can we go and do and be active? They then will feel understood. Once they feel understood, they trust. Once they trust, they talk.
And that's funny because a lot of times at the end of the day, you're thinking, oh, I don't have energy to go play basketball, but maybe that's a better way to access them.
Absolutely.
When you do need to talk to your son, what's a way that we can speak their language?
Well, we're gonna bridge this language gap that naturally comes up. And one of the best ways to do this is to play to more than one sense when we're talking to them. We usually talk to them without looking at them, without being next to them, and it's just words. But if with your preteen boys, you can use up to 3 senses. So talk to them with a hand on their shoulder while you're making eye contact, and the connections will start to happen. We also need to be really patient here because unlike girls, their ability to pull out the right language, the right vocabulary words to express themselves is much slower. So we need to be okay with silence. We need to ask a question and let it sit. If it takes them an extra minute, that's normal. That's normal for them.
That's good to know. And you also said that you have to recognize the attention gap.
Yes, and this one is, I don't know in your home, in viewers' homes, but this is a frustrating one for parents. This idea that our children procrastinate, that they can't pay attention long enough to stick with something. We faced it with our son. We still work through it a little bit. So we need to teach them the first thing, which is the art of the start. Kids procrastinate, especially preteen boys. They just don't know how to begin. So we need to help them begin. We need to help them get started. We also, with this attention issue, need to monitor their daily routines, showers, brushing teeth, those things that fall by the wayside. Monitoring means we're going to have to be by their side a little bit more until the synapses in their brain are making all the right connections to allow them to make these choices on their own. To do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Heather. Very much appreciated.